like, if I just put out, my boat crew will accept me. And I remember a guy in my boat crew, Nick Check, who passed away during a hostage rescue, who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Him and my buddy Steve, another guy there, gave me that reassuring, like, hey, you belong here. And that meant so much to me. So a lot of times I don't understand when a person who is in buds and is not a performer and everyone else wants him to quit, how they could like be there. Because I care so much about what my brothers think that if they didn't want me there, I would never be there. I would never want to slow anyone else down. I don't know. To answer your question, there were certainly hard times. I don't think there was ever a time where I wanted, like, I'm going to quit. But there was definitely times where I wanted the pain to stop. And one particular time I remember was, that 2-hour nap you get in buds or in Hell Week?
In Hell Week, yeah.
You're in a nice, warm sleeping bag on a cot, and they wake you up. I don't know if they still do this, but they wake you up and they just whisper, like, get up and hit the surf. In, like, the nicest, most compassionate voice. And it disarms you, right? Because they have circumvented that fight or flight response, right? You don't mount that defense. You just immediately get woken up very nicely and get sent into the cold water. And that was the closest where I was like, I want this to stop. I want this pain and suffering to stop. But as far as like being like, I want to quit or I'm going to quit, that it wasn't there for me.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. You always hear that thing that everyone thinks about quitting, and I'm like, I didn't think about quitting at all. I was like, whatever, bring it.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between thinking about quitting and thinking about just wanting it to stop.
Yeah, well,
right?
This definitely sucks.
Yeah. But you know what? I was, like you said, you felt free. When I showed the buds and I got wet and sandy, I got my buddy Jordan Lewis. I got a picture of when we first got wet and sandy in white shirts, and we're just beaming with smiles in this selfie. Just like, I was so happy to be there. Like, so happy to be starting my journey of embracing that suffering and suck.
What year is it right now? What year did you go to Buds?
So 247 started in spring of 2003. Summer 2003. So we were in Hell Week in fall of 2003, and then we graduated Buds in 2004 early.
So you're going to war, or at least hoping you are.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When, people ask me, did you join because of 9/11? And, frankly, I already told you this, but I joined for very, I think, more selfish reasons. But 9/11 only galvanized me to want to join even more. And if anything, it just how naive I was. I was a little bummed out. This is my 18-year-old self saying, oh, the war is going to be done by the time I get there. Like, I missed it. I'm 18 years old. This is 2002. And I could not have been any more wrong. But, of course, when at that time, especially in my development, I wanted war, I think. I think it's hard to articulate why. But a lot of people feel this way who train to do something. They want that. And I don't know how I'm sure we can talk at lengths about how we each now feel about the experiences we've gone through. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, but war is, I don't know about you, but it was pretty ugly.
Yeah, for sure. I was on a guy named Sam Harris's podcast, and he called me out because, I talk about how, like, leading men in combat is the best thing in my life. And then I also say war is absolute, the most horrible thing in the world. And he goes, how do you reconcile those two things? And the way I explained it to him, I said, have you ever met someone that has cancer, that survives, and when they get through, they say, I'm glad it happened to me because they learned so much. They would never wish it on anybody. No. Well, that's pretty much exactly how I feel about war.
I've never heard that analogy, but I think it's on point. I would never trade it for anything, and I would go back in the trenches right now in a split second with my brothers. I would go back in that environment right now. But I would never wish it on my own children, and I hope they never see it.
Yeah. you get done with buds, and then when did you know you were going to be going to did you go to 18 Delta?
I did. Yeah. So when I talk about accidents, like that was another accident. So, the recruiters what's the
difference between accidents and luck? Because you keep calling things accidents. Some of it sounds like it might be a little bit more luck. Some of it's luck that you made. Accidents, I don't know.
I think what I'm trying to point out is that there wasn't a plan.
Got it.
Not a plan at all. I mean, the plan for me was just, like I told you, all I wanted to be was a SEAL. I had no idea, no aspirations to be a physician, to be an astronaut. I just wanted one goal at a time. And that's really important to me, even to this day, that you have one singular goal, because you should be all in what you're doing. You should be genuine in what you're doing, not have some social climbing, some professional ladder that you're trying to meet these goals and these stepping stones. And why I said accidents, because I didn't want to be a corpsman. In fact, I wanted to be an intelligence specialist because it sounded cool. Or an operations. I had no idea what an IS or an OS, which is the rating for those two jobs. I just sounded cool. But I would have shipped out later. And I'm like, I want to ship out I want to go away as soon as possible. What's the rate that will get me there the fastest? And they said, son, you got to be a corpsman. I'm like, what's a corpsman? Well, you do this stuff. You got to do the hospital stuff. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to be on the mission. Like, if I in the unlikely event I made it through, I don't want to be the medic that doesn't get to do any cool stuff. Come to find out, that's completely not true at all. So that's why I say it's an accident. I didn't plan it that way. And after SQT, SEAL qualification training, I got sent to Fort Bragg to learn how to be a combat medic.
And then how long was that school?
That was 6 months. And
whoever told you that, this is where someone lied to you, because whoever told you the fastest way to get to the teams is to be a corpsman was just wrong.
Well, I think for me, I was okay with that because I just wanted to get the buds. Mm-hmm. And they're like, the fastest.
I see. The fastest way to get the buds was go corpsman.
Or the fastest way to join the Navy, just to get because I'm like, me talking to the recruiter, sir, I want to get out of here as soon as possible. What do I need to do? You need to be a corpsman. Okay, cool, I'll be a corpsman. Whatever. Figure it out later.
When you started doing 18 Delta, the school, the medic school, did you find it interesting? Were you kind of like, wow, this is cool?
Oh, absolutely. I'm fascinated by anything that's challenging. If it's engineering, space, medicine, anything that challenges you, it's fascinating. So I thought it was completely fascinating. I came to learn that medicine is pretty cool. And I took it seriously. Though I didn't want to be the medic, I understand the gravity of that kind of honor, that you are entrusted with the lives of your teammates. That's a huge honor, and I took it seriously. So once the decision was made that I'm going to do that, I was all in. I'm going to be the best medic I can be. And being at 18 Delta, honestly, those 6 months were more difficult than any time I had in medical school, because it's so much material crammed into 6 months on how to be a combat medic. And you learn a lot of skills. You learn how to do chest tubes, which is a procedure that physicians train years through medical school and residency to learn how to do. And you learn how to do that in 6 months. Crazy procedures, life-saving procedures. And I have to give props and respect to the Army, because I think that they train the best medics, really. And I think that their culture surrounding combat medics is on point to maintain that currency. So I had a great time at Fort Bragg. Is not the best of places to be stuck in, but I had a great time learning from our Army brothers and sisters.
Yeah, the way that we train our medics and the feats that they're able to perform on the battlefield are awesome. Keeping guys alive, it's amazing. So you get done with that, and for some reason, you show up at SEAL Team 3, and what was SEAL Team 3 on deployment when you showed up, or what was going on? Because somehow you ended up going to sniper school, right?
I know.
Which is totally ridiculous.
It is.
So for anybody that doesn't know, if you're a new guy in the SEAL teams, you don't get to go to sniper school. Normally a guy's going one platoon, maybe even two platoons, maybe even three platoons before a guy gets the honor of going to one of the most coveted schools in the SEAL teams, which is the sniper school. It's a hard school, but it's a qual that everybody wants. Everybody wants to go to that school. And somehow, accidentally, luckily, whatever you want to call it, you show up to Team 3 and you go right to sniper school as a medic, which is another school that everybody wants because it's a great qual, because all of a sudden you've got an actual marketable skill as a human being, besides like, hey, I can walk point and shoot a machine gun. That doesn't get you anywhere. But hey, I can save people's lives. That's a huge skill. And you're getting two of the best skills that the SEAL teams has to offer as a new guy.
Undeservedly. Absolutely. I also changed my viewpoint of medics because I didn't realize. I was going through SQT. Ty Woods, who I'm sure you know, passed away. He was one of my instructors in SQT, and he's a medic. He was a corpsman too, and he was like, dude, don't you know that the medic always has to go on the mission?
Medic always gets to go. Always
goes. Like, what are you talking about? Well, you don't want to be the medic. So that changed my perspective on medicine in the teams, because I just wanted to be a shooter. Like, and no disrespect to the officers of the SEAL teams, but I wanted to be the one pulling the trigger. I wanted to be in the deepest of the trenches. I know you understand where I'm coming from because you were enlisted before you became an officer. And I have no idea how I got to sniper school. I showed up, Team 3 was still in deployment, and they're like, new guy, go to sniper school. Roger that, I will. And for me, I had an awareness of where I stood on the totem pole. I knew I was a new guy. I knew I was smaller stature, and I just wanted to prove myself. I was just so hungry to do a good job. And so I knew sniper school was going to be hard, but like, man, I'll do everything to not fail this and bring this asset to the platoon. And I'm so thankful of whoever it was that allowed me to go to sniper school as a new guy before Team 3 showed up from deployment.
How'd you do in sniper school?
So it's like I don't know how it is now. It's 3 phases. The first phase is like PIC. It's like photographic image capture, where you basically learn how to use an SLR camera to take facial recognition pictures, basically, if you're, SR or special reconnaissance. And that's all geek stuff, like using computers, setting up a network, sending pictures through radio waves. I love that stuff, and that came naturally to me. The second part was scouting. And scouting, you also have to pass you have to get a certain score on the rifle, on the stalking, okay. The stalking and the rifle course, like 200-yard Marine Corps test down at Pendleton. We would have to do, which is a pretty hard test. It's all iron sights, and I had never shot a gun.
I was going to say, that's why I was asking you this question, because like I already said, most people going to sniper school have at least one deployment, if not 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And, you shoot thousands and thousands of rounds every workup and deployment. Yeah. So you're improving your skills.
Oh, yeah.
But you were coming right out of buds going to that with with no experience.
Yeah. I mean, you shoot very minimal. Like, you don't learn how to be a SEAL in buds. You just learn how to suffer.
Yeah.
Right? And then you go to SQT and you get a little taste of what it's like to learn some tactics, but you don't really know anything still. And you get to shoot a little bit, but it's not that much. So I didn't have that much. And I didn't grow up in a rural area where I had access to guns. And so I didn't shoot. I had very little shooting experience showing up to sniper school. So that was hard. And actually, if I remember this correctly, there was a point where I almost did not make it through because you have to get a certain score on the rifle. But something clicked. I mean, if you just stick with the points of performance, front sight focus, body positioning, follow through, breathing, like, they work, right? And you just I don't know if it's rounds or just perspective, but eventually things clicked for me, and I started to do actually pretty well in the shooting part. And the stalking was also something I struggled with, but once I learned I just had to geek it out and just kind of dissect what stalking is. And all stalking is, there's really 2 phases of it, right? You have dead space, right? So what dead space is if you have a known observer, you put a piece of earth between you and the observer line of sight, that